All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling a big one: how to handle those conversations about faith that can feel, well, pretty scary. We're going to look at a super practical method that helps turn those moments of fear into real opportunities for connection.
You know that feeling, right? That pit in your stomach when someone hits you with a question you just feel completely unprepared for? Your mind goes blank. You worry you're going to say the wrong thing, maybe look stupid, or, even worse, actually do more harm than good. It's a paralyzing fear, and honestly, it makes you want to just avoid these conversations altogether.
To see just how high the stakes can be, let me tell you a true story. It's about a young guy who grew up in the church, a good kid, but he also fell in love with science, specifically biology. And as he got into university classes, he started realizing, wait a minute, what my professors are teaching seems to totally contradict everything I've ever believed.
So he does the right thing. He goes to his pastor to get some guidance. But instead of help, instead of a conversation about how faith and science might actually work together, he gets this brutal ultimatum, a totally false choice between his head and his heart, with absolutely no room for any kind of nuance or real exploration. And here's the tragic part. The student walked away from his faith completely. This story, it just powerfully shows the kind of damage that can be done when a genuine, honest question gets shot down with a simplistic and frankly unhelpful answer. It proves we need a better way. We need a more compassionate way to engage.
So, before we even get to a specific method, we've got to lay a foundation. There are two core principles, two mindsets that you really need to adopt before you even think about what you're going to say.
First, and this is so important, remember your real aim is to answer the questioner, not just the question. See, a person isn't just a brain on a stick. You've got to understand why they're asking. Are they asking about suffering because they saw something on the news, or is it because they just lost someone they love? The why changes absolutely everything.
And the second principle? Oh, this one is so liberating. It is so much better to just admit you don't have the answer than to fumble your way through one. Seriously, saying, you know what? That's a great question, and I don't know right now, but I'm going to find out for you. That shows humility. That shows integrity. Trying to wade in and just making a mess can do so much damage.
Okay, with those two principles locked in place, let's move on to the really practical tool at the heart of this explainer. It's a simple, easy-to-remember, 5-step method designed to help you approach any tough question. It's called SHARE.
The acronym is SHARE, and each letter is a crucial step. You start with S for sympathize, which is all about connecting with them as a person. Then H for uncovering the hidden assumptions in their question. A is for applying a biblical worldview. R is for retelling the story of the gospel. And finally, E is for equipping your friends so they can keep learning. Let's see how this thing actually works in the real world.
Now, what's really interesting is seeing how a framework like this holds up against one of the most common, most emotionally charged questions anyone can ask. We're going to walk through the classic problem of evil and suffering, but we're going to use the SHARE method to do it.
And there it is. Whether it's kicked off by some global tragedy or a really deep personal heartbreak, this question is it's so human and it's so profoundly difficult. So where would we even begin to respond? Step 1, sympathize. Before you say anything else, you just affirm the person and their question. You build a human bridge. Simple things like, thank you for sharing that with me. Or even, yeah, I've wrestled with that one too. That can lower defenses and show that you're actually listening with care, not just loading up your next argument.
Next, we gently look for the hidden assumptions. Now, the assumption baked into this question is that only Christians have a problem with evil. But the reality is, everyone has to wrestle with it. For an atheist, the problem just looks a little different. If we're all just random collections of atoms, why does injustice feel so profoundly wrong?
This C.S. Lewis quote just nails it perfectly. That deep-seated feeling we all have that the world shouldn't be this way, our whole idea of injustice, it suggests we have some kind of built-in standard for what's just and good. The question itself actually points toward the existence of a straight line.
So now we can apply the Bible, which tells a very different story. While a purely materialistic worldview might see suffering and death as the absolute end, the biblical story is brutally honest about evil, yet it insists it doesn't get the final word. It introduces this radical possibility of redemption and ultimate justice. Now, to get to the next step, let's just geek out on a word for a second: compassion. What's so fascinating is where it comes from. It literally means to suffer with. And this shows us that true compassion isn't just talking about a problem from a safe distance, it means entering into it at a real personal cost.
And that definition is the perfect bridge to step 4, retell the gospel. Because the central claim of Christianity isn't about a distant God who gives us theories about pain. No, it's about a God who showed the ultimate compassion by entering into our suffering on the cross and actually doing something about evil at the greatest personal cost imaginable.
And finally, you equip your friend. Look, a 5-minute chat isn't going to solve the problem of suffering. It's not supposed to. So the goal is to leave them with something to help them continue their journey. Maybe a book, a short video, or just a really genuine offer to grab coffee and talk about it again. You're opening a door, not closing a case.
So after walking through that whole framework, we have to circle back to the real goal here. Because the whole point of all of this, it's probably not what you think.
And this is the most important point of all. You cannot argue someone into belief. It just doesn't work. Faith is not the prize for losing a debate. So the goal is not to win. In fact, the moment you make the conversation about winning, you've both already lost.
Instead, I want you to think about your role in a totally different way. Your job in these conversations, it's to be a friend who helps clear away the rubble. You know, all the intellectual and emotional debris, the misunderstandings, the bad experiences, the tough questions that are blocking their view.
And that is the ultimate goal, to just engage with sympathy and with honesty to help clear a path so your friend can get a really unobstructed view of who Jesus is. And then you just get out of the way.
And that leaves us with one final question to think about. In the lives of the people you care about, what's the rubble that you, with compassion and a little bit of wisdom, can help clear away?